Hello. Our guests will be arriving in another minute, so please, everyone, I request you to be seated. A very good morning to everyone present here. Thank you for joining us on this lovely morning today for a very special event. We are extremely honored to have with us Mr. Harish Mehta, sir, who will be throwing light on his recently published book called The Maverick Effect. May I please request Dean Ma'am to welcome our esteemed guest, Mr. Mehta, sir. He's the founding member and first chairperson of NASCOM, founder and chairperson of Onward Group, author of the book called The Maverick Effect, and first president and active member of TIE Mumbai. We welcome you, sir. We're also very fortunate to have amidst us Srimati Manisha Verma ji ma'am, Principal Secretary, Skills. Okay. We are blessed with the presence of Sri Nayan Patel ji sir, who is our esteemed mentor and trustee of NMIMS University. We welcome you, sir. I'm also very happy to welcome Mrs. Natasha Mehta ma'am, who is daughter-in-law of Mr. Mehta sir, who helped shape up this event. Thank you to all our guests for gracing us today with their presence. I'd now like to begin. So talking about Mr. Harish Mehta sir, he's one of the founding members and the first elected chairperson of NASSCOM, an industry association that was started from his office. At NASSCOM, he worked together with council members to get competing companies to collaborate towards a larger objective and thus enable the Indian IT industry that we know to a global identity. At NASSCOM, currently, Mr. Mehta sir is the convener of the Chairman Council. The Chairman Council guides long-term strategies of NASSCOM. He's also the founder and chairperson of Onward Group, having led 2 generations of the business. Onward Novel Software from 1991 to 2005, and Onward Technologies 2005 onwards. Onward Technologies is a publicly listed company that employs 2,000 plus people. Apart from his work at NASSCOM and Onward, Mr. Mehta sir is passionate about injecting scientific mindset in India and encouraging innovation-driven entrepreneurship. He is relentlessly pursuing his vision to make India a technologically smart nation. He believes that innovation-driven entrepreneurs like us will act as change agents for the upliftment of the society. He has helped build institutions like TIE and Indian Angel Network. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from College of Engineering, Pune, and a master's in electrical engineering, computer science from Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute, NYU, US. At NASSCOM's 25-year celebration event, Mr. Mehta sir was recognized by none other than our Prime Minister, Honorable Mr. Narendra Modi, for contribution to the Indian IT industry. He recently authored his first book called The Maverick Effect, which documents his journey and life lessons in the birthing of NASSCOM and the subsequent revolutionization of the Indian IT industry. The book is already a bestseller and has earned praise and great reviews from across the spectrum. Speaking about the Maverick Effect, so in the mid-1970s, a young 20-something man living an American dream threw away a lucrative job as a database manager and came back to India. At that time, India had no IT industry to speak of. Computers were a novelty, and the nation was trapped in socio-economic backwardness. As Mr. Mehta sir struggled to find his stride, he realized that India's nascent and fragmented IT industry acutely needed a unified voice that could speak to the government, change laws, and harness the country's potential. In an unlikely alliance of headstrong and competing young professionals, he united other IT entrepreneurs to envision a world-beating association that would revolutionize the Indian IT industry. The Maverick Effect is the extraordinary story of this band of dreamers who joined hands to transform a nation while also changing the lens through which the world looked at India. Valued at a staggering $200 billion today, The Indian IT industry directly employs more than 4 million people. So we're extremely excited to hear the untold story of NASCOM and the IT industry's revolution that changed a billion fortunes. I would also like to introduce our very own, yes,
ma'am. Before I allow Antara to proceed, ma'am, we are very fortunate that you are here. We would like to welcome, please put your hands together for Mrs. Manisha Verma, who is the Principal Secretary, Skills, Employment, Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Dean ma'am is requested to welcome. Ma'am, thank you so much.
I'd also like to introduce our very own Dr. Anuja Agarwal ma'am, our Associate Dean and Professor for Technology Management and Digital Transformation, NMIMS. She's enthusiastic and passionate about technology and design thinking. She's also on board of BARC for NMIMS and Atal Incubation Center. And myself, Antara Shankar, student of MBA Tech IT 5th year. Both of us will be moderating today's session. On this note, I would like to hand over the mic to Anuja ma'am to share her impressions of the book when she read it.
Thank you, Antara. So good morning, very warm welcome, and very warm welcome to all the audience here and our esteemed guests. So I think me and Antara are very fortunate because we get to quiz Mr. Mehta, and with his permission, sir, there might be some tough questions because we are attained to asking tough questions to the students, and being a professor, I will probably not be able to take that wave away from me. I was very fortunate to read this book written by Mr. Mehta, The Maverick Effect. So when I was growing up and I was entering into the computer science field back then in 1986, and those were the times when we used to hear, I'm a Delhi University graduate, and in Delhi University there was a lot of furore going on around IT and computer science becoming the next big wave. So it was just beginning. Many of us didn't understand much. So in these seminars that we used to attend in Delhi University, sir, your name would crop up alongside Mr. Kohli, Mr. F.C. Kohli, Shri F.C. Kohli, and many others. And you were our inspirational figures. They would say, watch him. You must know. Our professors would tell us, unki life ko study karo. What has he done? Why he went and he came back, and so on. So I have grown up listening about Mr. Mehta and many other doyens, Mr. Devang Mehta, Dr. N. Shishagiri, and many others. So this book actually for me was reliving or reminiscing what I had grown up as a teenager and later on as a graduate and going for postgraduate in computers. And a lot of things I could connect with, a lot of people, sir, that you have mentioned in the book. It was a mystery resolving itself many a times, because sometimes we used to wonder when I joined as a systems programmer in a firm, many policies we did not understand. Many government's policies or some decisions that they took, we couldn't understand. Now, when I read the book, and maybe I'm with so many years behind me now, I can appreciate and understand. So that book is revealing a lot of things for us, and I'm sure when the students are sitting here, the importance of failure and success to be celebrated alike. I think that was one very big learning for me. The way you have given one input or one lesson through this is, do not brush problems under the carpet, bring it out, face them, and let them carve the next wave ahead. I think that is one takeaway for me in that book. But let me tell you, the audience, book mein there are mysteries. I don't know if that was intentional. There are mysteries, there are some questions not answered deliberately, or I don't know. And you will find that book is very intriguing. You pick it up, you will know what IT was, how it has come to this, and what opportunity lies for you in future. Especially my young students sitting here and the other campuses who are watching this Facebook Live. आगे का समझने के लिए पीछे क्या हुआ था वो जानना बहुत ज़रूरी है. And this is what, to a lot of extent, sir has brought those mysteries, revealing some of them, but yet he's kept some of those intriguing things still with him. And I hope that during this interview, when we quiz you, sir, you will be able to bring out those as well. So with those words, that was my impression and my learning, sir. Thank you so much for such a great read. My first question, Antara, my first question, right? What prompted you to write this book, and now?
First of all, thank you for your kind words. And thank you, Doctor, for going to ask tough questions. And I'll leave it to the audience also to ask those questions. Feel free to ask questions. I thank Nayan, first of all, for, I think it was 6 months back, traveling back from Mahabaleshwar, the idea of my book coming out and then doing an event at NMIMS took birth. And today we are in life together at the Institute. Now, seeing all of you, frankly, I have raised the average age of this auditorium. I see so many youngsters, unbelievable. I mean, most of you are probably even not born. What, 22 years average must be here? Yeah, so I mean, industry already has about $8 billion top line at that point in year 2001. And I'll come up with those numbers and whatnot. But yes, I came to India in 1976, and I have seen how the IT industry has changed. I have seen how India has changed. To all of you, I mean, when you take a one swipe and you enter a different world on your phone. In our time, there was no such, that swipe could be even 10 years. Like, for example, you want to buy a scooter. At your age, you would say, from my home to college, I'll buy a scooter. You place the order. You'll get the delivery when you are married and you have 2 children. So that was the time of shortages in the country. You want to eat fruits. Your parents will say, let's go to Kashmir. So that's the kind of environment our generation grew up with. And suddenly today, we are now ready to take on the world. How did this change happen in the country? How did India emerge as a global tech powerhouse? Today, if you look at the world's top 2,000 companies, they're all powered by Indian IT industry. How did that change come about? Today, for each one of you, there is a great potential as a job opportunity to become an intrapreneur, become Deepak Parekhs or the N. Chandras of the world tomorrow, or you become an entrepreneur as a startup entrepreneur and build a unicorn, or you grow as an individual, become a super programmer. The massive opportunities today lie in front of you. When we grew up, when I graduated, the only possible job, only that also is possible, was to join Maharashtra State Electricity Board as a support engineer for 400 rupees a month. And that too if I get the job. So when this changes happen, a person like me who has been in the industry believe very strongly it is the IT industry that has changed India. And IT industry changed because of the role NASSCOM played in making this IT industry change. But when I looked around, and this is 3-4 years back, and I do buy books of government officers, bureaucrats, Reserve Bank governors, politicians, the first thing I would do is look at the index page and see, is the word NASSCOM there? I was shocked. NASSCOM was nowhere in that entire book. Then I say, what do they talk about the contribution of technology industry? Again, very little reference about the contribution of IT technology industry. I looked for any book which has documented the IT history. Couldn't find anything. I said, here is a missing piece in India's 75 years history. India has changed, but no one knows what really made that change happen. And there is an African proverb which says, if lions had historian, the tales of glory of hunting would be very different. So if we have not told the story, we are at fault. But writing that history of 35 years, you are saying it's mystery, intriguing, and whatnot. But how do you put that story in? How do you, and trying to put a claim on the ground saying, we changed India. I mean, there'll be thousands of critics. We may look like a fool after the book has come out, saying, these are the 15 things wrong in your claim. I'm not an author, I'm not an historian, I'm not an economist. But then my daughter-in-law, Natasha, she is here. She said, Dad, I'll back you up. Let's put a team together. So I put a team together of uh, writers, researchers, and economists to address each of that facet and wrote the book. Not only wrote the book, after writing the book, I got it validated by all my colleagues of NASCOM from those days, Ashank Desai, K.V. Ramni, uh, Saurabh Srivastav, Narayan Murthy. I said, you please go through it and tell us, are there any missing pieces? Not only that, I went to the critics of NASCOM. I have many friends in the industry who are the critics of NASCOM. I don't know, how many of you know NASCOM, by the way? How many of you have heard of NASCOM? Here, in the backside, students? Okay, all right. So hopefully I'll relate to when I talk about NASCOM there. So critics of NASCOM also, because the NASCOM brand, they want NASCOM to do 10 times more things what it is doing today, and which we always have debates and arguments on it. So I got them to validate the book also. I said, do you agree? Are there any missing pieces? And that's how the book came out. And that, I can say, the genesis of writing the book. Yeah.
So, it's quite interesting you say. And in the book, you have actually, it's not all gaga about all the people that you have spoken about. And I believe it takes courage to put those and articulate those tractions or tensions and the stress that you had with some of the people that you just named as well. So it's beautiful articulation. And Natasha, thank you so much for bringing it to us.
But I'll tell you here, writing the negatives or the failures and weaknesses, all that, was again, I had met one I had read about one Gujarati author, Gunwant Shah, and he said that if you are writing an autobiography, first of all, it has to be truthful. If you are not truthful, only your family members and associates will read. Nobody else will read this book. If you want people to read, you have to be truthful, and they can see through it. And second, when you write in that format, you have to assume you are walking naked on the street. And once you do it, and you leave all the data in front of people, let them decide what it means and how to interpret and what are the lessons for the future drawing from it.
So when I was reading the book, the thought that came to my mind was that it must have been so difficult to bring India out of the stereotypes, as you've mentioned, land of the snake charmers, and converting it to the tech powerhouse that it is today. So I'm sure this journey of transformation would have its own ups and downs, as there normally are. So I would like you to tell us what it took to bring this transformation, and what was the importance of failure when we speak as a part of parcel of growth.
First is answer when we read the book. You have all the details of what the challenges were and so on and so forth. But let's talk about the failure. I'll talk about my personal story. I did my database. I was a database manager in USA, earning fantastic salary, and my wife was earning good money. But we felt that we are not able to Americanize ourselves and integrate ourselves with American society, so we should go back to India. So we came back to India. I was one of the only two Mumbaikars who had come back to India, and I to Mumbai in those days. Now, I met Mr. Sharu Rangnekar, the management consultant, in a similar meeting, but a much smaller conference. Someone said that this gentleman has come back from US. And I had tore up my green card, which is in those days, even today also we say USA, the land of paradise, land of honey and money. And here is a nut who tore up his green card and wants to settle down in India. So Sharu Rangnekar told me, in front of everybody, welcome, Mr. Mehta. You are a first-class citizen in a second-class country, in a third-class administration, and yours and my job is to fix it. Now, just imagine the kind of environment was there at that time. And I had come back hoping to join my dad's business, then suddenly realized he had massive debt on his business. So, and that film distribution business also was not very attractive. I looked at my father-in-law's business, who was making spare parts or parts for the two-wheelers. So he said, you can make one zinc nipple And he took me to Kanjur Mart. When I saw those galas, I said, my God, here is masters in computer science has come back not to work in a gala like that. So I said, that's not my cup of tea either. And then I met my cousin. He said, Harish, take the next flight and go back to USA. I said, why are you saying it? He said, you are a straightforward person. You will not succeed in India. I said, why do you say that? He said, here you do not know your competitor, whether he will do customs chori, he will do income tax chori, he will do GST chori. There is so many, when you do not know the input cost of your competitor, how are you going to survive? You just cannot match that unless you follow that, which you're not going to do it. So that gave me the idea of entering, not to give up, but as I have to do business, and I will do, and so I'll enter the technology business. Because technology business has no room for corruption. We have to deliver. It has to be performance driven. So that was a hope that that business will allow us to do what one wants to do. So that's how.
Here is the tough one. Do you really mean it? That it is corruption free and everything? Does it remain so now, even now?
Yeah, substantially. So, see, ultimately human mind decides. The purchase officers, and that some certain things will happen. But ultimately you have to deliver the solution. And that is why partly because if you say our entire industry is substantially export focused, not domestic focused. We have still a long way to go into cultural transformation. And I want all of you to help us change that culturally, the country. So there are challenges. But on the other hand, there are also equally good opportunities. And there were not many of us, so we could do that. So that's the idea behind the failure and then jumping. And then at that point I met one major, Bala Subramaniam in Delhi, who was part of Department of Electronics. He said, for people like you to come back and settle down, we are coming up with a scheme where you can import a computer, we're giving 400% software export commitment. And that's how I entered, and that's how I got into the software business in India. Okay, so what was the first question?
Yes, sir. It was how
Okay.
did this transformation came up back then?
See, from the industry perspective now, because I entered the software business, this was in 80s. And in those days, software people didn't know even how to spell software. Different government departments didn't know what software is. Each one had their own interpretation of software. Software was more like some fabric to be folded and kept in the cupboard. Software as an intangible was very difficult for any policymaker to even conceive what it could be. So income tax would have a different rules for software exports. A Reserve Bank will have different rules. Ministry of Finance will have different rules. Ministry of Commerce will have different. And it was a total chaos. And all the rules of physical world were applied to intangible software. To give you an example, when we were exporting software, the customs officer will say, I need to see what you are exporting. Now, how many of you know software? Now, what will you show him when you are exporting a software project? So print 10,000 lines of code and give it to the officer as a sample. So we did. We printed 15 pages and gave it to him. He said, no, I need a physical media. So this data was stored on a floppy. I don't know how many of you have even seen floppy probably. But again, it's a media on which we used to send physically abroad with the data in it. So that floppy he took, and the first thing he did was staple it with his book in his own. Now, when you staple the floppy, you lost the evidence. So that was the knowledge of the officer, but he was going by the lakir ke, as we say, following the rules and having some physical copy. So I had counted more than 100 regulations strangulating the industry. And then I went around, and Ashank Desai, for example, he was also in business. He also had similar issues. Met Mr. Kohli, TCS also had similar issues. Met Nandan and the team in Bangalore. They had, like that, there were 40, 50 companies who were in business. Each had this kind of problems. And that's where we say the only way to handle this is to form an association. Together we go to the government, tell them, these are the challenges, and you help us solve that. There again, I'll tell you, we decided as a group, we will not bribe anyone. for any policy change. Sometimes we had to wait 5 years for a policy change to happen. Some of the champion would come in like Mr. Vittal in those days and start helping us make those changes. So that was an uphill task for almost 5 to 7 years before we started seeing the results of our effort.
You know, it's very interesting. I read in the book that, you know, you were saying that people didn't even know how to spell software. So, sir has written that there was one headline in the newspaper and there it was written software instead of software. So the spelling was about software, W-E-A-R. So that was that bad from then to now. Next question from me, sir. So there's a quote there, co-ownership of a small idea, but a long journey changed the fortunes of millions of people. What is your advice to the youth of today, my students, to keep their entrepreneurial spirit burning high despite the odds?
I don't know what odds are, frankly.
That's great.
See, today, all the advanced technologies that we talk about, metaverse, to IoT, 5G, robotics, quantum, you take most of these technologies, barring few, and these are all, we call it exponential technologies. Exponential meaning every year their performance doubles, literally. Now, the simple sensor in your hand on a phone, there are 26 sensors. Each sensor in itself is a supercomputer. Now, when you have such computing power in your hand, what can you do with it? It's your imagination is the limitation. And if you look at India, we have 1,000 problems. You can pick any problem you want to. We need to create 90 million jobs over the next 10 years. Can you come up with a solution to come up with an entire model by which you create jobs? Our per capita is $2,000. USA, $60,000. Can you come up with ideas and solutions by which, and these technologies will allow you to solve some of the toughest problems. Because when these are all software driven, and the confluence or the permutation, combination of these technologies will help you solve any problem literally, not of India, but globally. So I see, as I was telling somebody, I wish I was of your age today. I would love to, I'm so excited about what the possibilities are of tomorrow. So I would encourage, all of you, some of you may or may not appreciate being so tech-driven, but I believe very strongly there is an extremely bright future for all of us. And India to now become, like Dr. Sumantra Ghosal used to say, that 1,000 years of downward spiral of India, from Mughal Raj, British Raj, and the socialistic license Raj, it was arrested by the IT industry of India. Today is an opportunity to create a virtuous cycle of growth for India to become a developed nation in the next 10 years. So I'm extremely bullish, positive, you may want to call it. I have seen India changing from snake charmers to where it is today. And what you call most of the impossible problems have been solved on the way. And what we hear today, the odds what you're saying, they're quite very small, frankly, from that perspective.
Thank you, sir. I think that is very inspiring for all of us here. So in your book, you have revealed how a strong, principled and active body like NASSCOM was able to prevent the potential dents in the reputation of the IT industry due to Satyam, scam and the likes. While there are many pillars of NASSCOM that were able to support this IT industry in the crumbling from the world stage in terms of reputation and ethics, could you please pick one value or a pillar of NASSCOM that you would like our young students to imbibe today?
How much time I have? See, we have a number of values, I would call it, which we're still following it. We're immersed into it, starting with India first, be consensus-driven, no personal agenda, collaborate and compete. We have robust conflict resolution processes. We have sense of ownership by everybody, identifying signal versus noise, because each signal can be worth $10 billion opportunity tomorrow. So it becomes the NASSCOM's job partly to identify those signals, but then there are hundreds of other noise coming up. And so again, also these are the basic values of NASSCOM that is driving it. If I have to pick one, I would pick collaborate and compete as a value. Now, just imagine you have individuals like Mr. Kohli of TCS, Narayan Murthy of Infosys, Azim Premji from Wipro, you have Genpact, you have Accenture, you have IBM in India. All these companies, they all compete with each other fiercely in the marketplace. But when they come to NASSCOM, we have built hopefully a platform which is neutral, independent, and transparent, where they all come together, forget about their individual companies' challenges. They've learned how to articulate their company challenges at an aggregate level and discuss among everybody and come up with a solution. Now, as a result, any impossible problem can be solved, or you end up doing things which are completely outstanding in terms of eventual outcome. I'll give you one example. There was a time when, I'm going back in the early 90s, where our customers of our IT industry abroad, they wanted to come to India and set up a back office operation. But they wanted to have 100% ownership. I hope I can relate to all of you, but I'm sure the people in the front line would know very well. They wanted 100% ownership. Now, amongst us, when we talked, we were scared. If you allow MNCs to come in, they will pay double the salary and take away our best employees. The business which we are doing with them, under some garb, they'll shift it as a back office and do it under 100%. So we'll be left holding the bag. So why should we allow? And the general mindset of the industrialists was to protect their industry. So whether through high import tariff or not giving them a license to come to India and whatnot. So we all sat together, discussed, debated, and what I remember is we must have discussed this for more than a year. Should we allow or should we not allow? Because on the other end, we were seeing that the total market size in those days for outsourcing was at $300 billion. But what was accessible to us was only $10 billion. There were lots of obstacles to overcome. Partly the mindset of the customer himself, whether to give that business to us or not, whether to trust. There are lots of issues there. But we say, unless we convince them and create that ease of doing business with India as a brand, chances are they'll open up other areas for us to do it. So with that hope, and of course we had done our own homework, we had gone back to them 15 times to understand and whatnot. And in that discussion and debate, somebody, because you allow creative juices to flow of best people. So if you see the CEOs of IT industries, luckily, they are some of the best Indians in that sense. So when their juices flow, somebody said, whoever develops human capital of India is us, and who doesn't is not us. Even in an Indian company, if they don't develop human capital of India, is not us. So that, we can say, and today also, whenever we are doubtful about taking a decision at NASSCOM, we use this as a guideline. Does it help develop human capital of India or not? Then only we support that particular policy. And so we went to Dr. Manmohan Singh. At that time, he was the finance minister. We said, we as NASSCOM recommend you allow 100% ownership to MNCs. You know, some of the bureaucrats told us, देश को बेचने आए हो क्या? Are you giving a backdoor entry to East India Company, to these MNCs to come to India? Are you guys mad? I mean, to giving the... But we were ready with the facts, the figures and whatnot, and our vision, how our business will grow and how they will help us, because we can learn their world-class quality processes of software development. We can learn even a simple thing like building, setting up a server. They had a process, and it was a world-class process. So MNCs were way ahead, 10 years ahead of us. So we can learn all these processes from them. That will strengthen us so we can now attack larger market segment. Dr. Manmohan Singh agreed. And today, that particular segment, you'll be surprised, you'll be very proud to know that we have 1,800 R&D centers in India of these companies abroad. They employ 1.2 million high-end engineers. And the kind of work they do is all high-end in a sense that they are co-creating future with their parent companies. Unheard of. That's what IT industry is doing. So is this particular segment of global capability centers, R&D centers, whatever you call it. Now just imagine that if we had not taken that decision as a collaborator and compete, keeping India first, this segment would not have taken birth. And if it had not taken birth, and of course there's a symbiotic relationship between all this, which allowed them to grow, which allowed us to grow, and also industry to grow. So that's where the power of this value of collaborate and compete, keeping India first. And I'll do another benefit of that. About 8-10 years back, seeing our industry's growth and success and various numbers, we have not even talked about it, but if you see all those numbers and the contribution industry has made, China wanted to compete with India. Not only compete, they wanted to become number one. Now you all know China's power. There is no democracy, so they can decide and go after it aggressively. So they appointed foresters as an agency to come up with a master plan, how to be number one, become number one globally in IT services. John McCarthy, who was the CEO of Foresters, who was in charge of that project, he used to come to India very often before, so he knew about us. He told them, unless you create NASSCOM equivalent association in your country, forget about competing with India. Now that's the power of that collaborate and compete, and the NASSCOM as an independent, neutral platform allowing people to work together. Now, and you imagine China not coming head on with us, how much it would have helped our industry grow. If they had come, entered the game, we would have been half the time busy fighting them, pricing would have been in attack, and lots of other issues would have come in. But we eliminated a competitor in a completely different way. So that's the value one value I can talk about.
Time for some audience questions, Antra?
Now we'll have the floor open for the questions from the audience. So I think we have first Leena with us. Leena, who's going to ask the first question from MBA Tech IT. Yes.
Hello, sir. I'm Leena. So my question is, back then, like piracy.
Leena, can you step up a little ahead, please, so that sir can see you? Thank you.
Hello, sir. So I'm Leena. So my question is, piracy, as you have mentioned in your book, was one of the issues being faced by the industry back then. So what were some similar issues which are posing, which the industry was facing back then?
Sorry?
The question is about piracy, because it was very prevalent those days. So how did you overcome, or how did NASSCOM as an industry body?
Good question. I'm happy somebody is sensitive about IP or intellectual property. See, in India, we believe in right to copy, not in copyright. When we used to visit prospects in US, I'm going back 30 years, 25, 30 years, they would look at us as a thief. They say, why should I part with my data and the software? Tomorrow I'll go and sell it in the market. We'll copy my software, give it to my competitors, anyway, X, Y, and Z. So there was no trust between us and the customer. We realized, while IP has no direct relationship to our business, but building India Inc. brand was so critical. So we had to change the Copyright Act. Now, of course, there were other reasons also, like software product business. We come to that later. So IP became an issue. So we must strengthen our Copyright Act of India. So we met some of the government officers. One officer said, Manisha ji, that what are you talking? Kohinoor wo chori karke le gaye. And all our jewelry is sitting in the British thing. They looted us all over. Why? This is our time to loot their software. And we should pirate, and we should pirate and do many reports. There was another officer who said, look at us, our Ramayana, Mahabharata, we give it free. We don't charge. Why should the American companies charge for their software product? Somebody even said that Aryabhatta had zero. If we had put royalty on it, India would have been the richest country in the world, if you allowed them to use zero. Anyway, so that was the mindset against giving that author, like saying, I'm also worried about my book. Somebody said your book will be out very quickly in the market by pirates. Now, what do? How do you solve that? So anyway, so we were very clear, okay, we need to strengthen the Copyright Act. We now, we had, again, there's a tough question in terms of why would Lok Sabha, if the bureaucrats think that way, what about all our MPs? So we approached every political party at that time, there were 15 of them, and gave a presentation why IP Copyright Act should be modified and build India's brand as an ease of doing business. Okay, we will protect your software, and there will be various mechanisms to drive it. And that's how the Copyright Act got strengthened, and we still have a long way to go, but at least there is a good beginning that has taken place. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir, you did.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Very nice, yeah, thank you. Next question.
Next question that we have is from Shubham Sharma. Could somebody please pass the mic there? He's a student from MBA Tech EXTC.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Sir, so you had to take a very tough decision of leaving behind the opportunities in the US and come to India, and we are about to graduate, and feasibly most of us will be in that stage. So could you give some insights on how you took that decision and what were the factors and what you thought about while taking that stance?
So he's asking, you obviously gave up your job back then in the US and came to India. So he's saying that many of us, many of them in the audience, they have this very attractive future in US that they perceive. And your response will help them to take a good call, whether how tough it is to come back, or should I stay here, or should I be in the US. So he's asking, आपने इतना tough call लिया था, what prompted you to do that, and do you regret it today?
What prompted me in those days?
Yes.
Which I explained before, is such that we could not Americanize ourselves. And we wanted to live with the family. Very simple logic. It was not nationalistic, frankly, jingoistic feeling of India and whatnot. Simply living with the family was the reason we came back to India. But yeah, after coming back, yeah, then you want to go all out and do your best. And I can tell you, I never regretted even once. I still feel unhappy when I land at the Bombay airport, when the plane lands and you see Asalfa village below and you see the poverty. You do feel there's a lot of work to be still remaining to be done. But that does not detract me or saying that, hey, I go back to US. As a matter of fact, as an industry, many years back, government came to us and said that all the IITs are going abroad, so we must put an income tax on it, because government is funding it, and why should they go abroad? And our answer was, you want brain drain or you want brain in drain? Because India has no jobs to offer, so let them go. Why should we stop it? If they succeed there, fine. If they contribute back to India, fine. I mean, so we were, in some sense, believed in that so free market thinking. Okay, let the best brain go where he or she wants to do it. Yeah, now today India has equally fantastic opportunities. So many of them are now staying back, and many who has gone is coming back. So all that process will continue.
So go ahead, take your own call. Don't worry. In fact,
Yeah.
now, sir, that time it must have been you must have been an outlier that you came back. But these days I've seen a lot of people actually take that experience and come back, and they are setting shops here, and they are further giving more jobs to people.
My book was launched in London about 4 weeks back. And some Indians who have been living in London for the last 20 years, they came and said, we are very proud now. First time I'm feeling proud as an Indian. The story of IT industry and contributing and changing India has created pride. So we have a dark history as India for 1,000 years. We don't have very strong, very positive stories to talk about. If I ask you which story, so at least now we have one story to talk about. So that pride is getting created. Even I have another story here, that 15 years back, I was on my way to attend a TiCon, which is the, again, entrepreneurs' big event in San Jose, California, Silicon Valley. So I took a taxi from San Jose airport to go to Fremont Hotel, where the event was. My taxi driver was a Sardarji, mid-age Sardar. So he asked me, "Kahan se aa rahe ho?" I said, "I'm coming from Mumbai." "What do you do?" I said, "I'm in software." He said, "Suddenly, aap logon ne hame izzat dilai hai." So I'm scratching my head. What have we done to this mid-age family, Sardar, to create that pride in him? He says, "No, today any American who travels my taxi, he or she thinks I'm a PhD student doing part-time taxi driving." So that is the pride our industry created to an average Indian in Silicon Valley. So again, it's up to us, you to decide how, what, when, where you want to contribute.
I think we have time for one last question from the audience. Yes, sir, please. Could you
Nayan has a
please-
question.
Mr. Mehta, you are in the IT industry and you found that niche, that small gap that needed to be filled, and you created NASCOM, and that revolutionized the IT industry and created history for India. I'm sure with all this and learning of this journey, you can now take the next step of identifying the next block that needs to be revolutionized. I think, should you not take that up and, I think, Manisha man, with the skill development or something like that, that's something, a new block that needs to be developed. Have you ever thought of that? What next after this?
See, what next is a continuous process as far as we are concerned. As a NASCOM also, every 5 to 6 years, we reimagine who we are. We start changing our structures and processes and whatnot. So from when we started with the software services, we added BPO services, we added global capability centers or the R&D center services. Then of course the startups took birth. Today all, if you see 60,000 startups who have taken birth, they're out of 5.3 million software engineers that our industry is employed. So that has taken birth. Now we are allowing multiple technologies to converge and find solutions. And the Department of, for example, Maharashtra government has different funds now to encourage entrepreneurs, be it women entrepreneurs, be it others, to get into that next wave of change. You see this change all over. Other day, you must have heard Rajnath Singh gave 75 projects in artificial intelligence for defense to different companies. Somebody told me that in Lucknow, I'm part of the NASCOM Deep Tech Club. Deep Tech is a blend of physics, engineering, and design thinking. And that can solve a very fundamental level number of problems. So one of the members of the Deep Tech Club was in Lucknow, his hometown. And he said, when I was driving, suddenly I saw drones managing the traffic. Can you believe in a tier 2 city, they're using technology and absorbing it? So I see the big change happening, India becoming digital India or digital society and leading the world in all these areas.
So in a way, sir.
Did I answer?
Sorry, I think Ketan wanted to ask one question, sir. He's been waiting. Ketan? So while he takes the mic, you just, interesting point you made was tier 2 cities also showing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in a way, IT has democratized this. We no longer should say tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 cities. We should stop calling it like that. Your thoughts?
You're right. I mean, NASCOM, we are very clear. We keep India first, not few companies first. So there has to be a level playing field. We must allow new companies to take birth. Those are the prerequisites of anything that we do. And that has been ingrained in the culture of NASCOM. It's not only me. There are 180 volunteers today who work actively with NASCOM from different companies. And they all are imbibing similar values, similar ways of doing it. Yeah, so they go in their own even hometown, tier 3 cities, even the rural villages. Like we have launched a major initiative now called Project Ideate, where inclusion and diversity would be for the poorest of poor. Because as we move towards a $1 trillion digital economy, and that will happen. So it will also create digital haves and digital have-nots. Apart from the poorest of poor who don't have access to education, healthcare, and many other. Now they will be without digital. So at NASSCOM, we have taken one initiative. What can we do? To get the poorest of poor also in the mainstream. So a number of things are being already planned and in action. So you will see the digital public projects which Nandan and the group that are driving it, be it Aadhaar, be it Am I speaking too much? That's why the battery. So all those, what we call, first, anywhere in the world, only it is happening really in India, of this kind of digital public projects coming up. And you will see open commerce coming up, you will see our healthcare platform coming up, education, lots of such areas where open source and the other technologies are relevant to change India at the grassroots level are all being in work right now. You will see the results. Even natural language translation. We are hoping that 2 years from now, Prime Minister can speak in Hindi. You can listen in Telugu. You can listen to in Tamil. I can listen to in Gujarati. That software would be available a few years from now.
Ketan, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the question that in your book you have highlighted about the tenets of Jainism. So the tenets of Jainism follows the Svikar, Aparigraha and Ahimsa. So I was keen and interested to know that when you have applied it in your critical situations in your life, so why didn't you apply in your business? So
why didn't I?
Why didn't you apply the tenets of Jainism in your business decisions?
Why did?
First of all, no, okay. When they all ask me questions about why I did certain things, X, Y, and Z, what was back of your mind? So that's what came to me. Okay, it could be that Anekantvad of Jainism, forget about Jainism. So I'll call it a principle of humanity. Religion is all one part of it. But it's a very solid principle, Anekantvad. There is no such thing as absolute truth. And the truth depending on the person's angle. Today, Wikipedia, for example, Wikipedia Foundation's CEO retired about 10 days back or 15 days back. She also said, we just don't know how to handle truth. The Ukraine war and the Ukraine-Russia war, who is telling the truth? And what do we keep, what we don't keep in Wikipedia? They have a tough challenge. So I'm going to write to her, okay, study Anekantvad of Jainism. They have described exactly how to handle Anekantvad. And there are 7 ways of looking at the truth and managing and whatnot. Hopefully, Wikipedia may find an answer of how to present it. So like that, I mean, these are some of the principles which came to my mind, which appealed to me in whatever I do. So Anekantvad came in very handy that when there's a group, how do you take a decision for a higher common good? Simple. Easier than to carry everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So while there are, thank you. So while there are lots of other questions, pages into pages, but I think in the interest of time, I want to ask you the last one with Antara, that's fine. Today, how do you feel and what is your final lesson that you would tell the audience, and especially these are young budding entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, and most of them are, they're all engineers, so they're all in that tech field. So what does your heart say? What is that future glory that you want to show them? And how should they prepare themselves for it?
I have a very simple answer. Dream big, think big. Don't be afraid of all the possible failures that can occur on your way. Just to, again, going back to, and keep raising your targets and numbers and whatnot. So when we started NASSCOM, we were at $150 million. So when we said our vision should be $1 billion. There are many other dimensions of growth, but let's say top line is one. So Mr. Vittal said, gentlemen, do you know how many zeros are in a billion? You're talking about a billion. But when we were closer to billion, we started aiming for 50 billion. When we reached 50 billion in 2008 or so, we started dreaming of $200 billion, which we crossed last year. Now we are dreaming of $350 billion. Yeah, but this is not pure financial engineering or Excel worksheet projections. These are based on solid data. in a sense, what is the total outsourcing market? What do we need to do to address that? What capacity, capabilities we have to build? We do all the deep analysis to say, okay, yes, these numbers are doable. But you have to aim high, and then you work backward. We call it fold the future back in today. First aim high, first dream big, and then work towards it.
So that's, we call abductive thinking in some of the classes we have mentioned, right? So you think, create memories of the future and work towards it today. So with that, thank you so much, sir. I'm in the interest of time, and we thought we'll keep it very slick. It was so wonderful to quiz you. Of course, I didn't ask too many quiz questions because otherwise my seniors are here and I have to be here. I don't want to be quizzed later on that. So it is my honor and pleasure to present the vote of thanks, sir, to all the audience, to Manisha ma'am, to Nayan Bhai Patel, sir, to our Dean, Dr. Mahajan. Thank you so much. And Natasha, thanks a lot for making this happen. It really wouldn't have happened without you. So with that, that brings us to this end of very, very enlightening and inspirational session personally, and I think for the audience as well. As we heard you, sir, relive your memories with us and share your experience so candidly with us. When I was doing my graduation, like I mentioned, Sir, Mr. Mehta's name used to crop up often, and our professors used to say, these are some of the people whom you must shadow, whom you must, I mean, we obviously could not shadow, but then they said, follow their stories, follow their path, and you will know where India is going. Today, as I heard him share the several pearls of wisdom on how he felt the need of a collective voice of the software services industry and differentiate itself from the rest of the computer and IT industry. I think one learning also for us and for you all is have that differentiation back with you, because then only you can shine up. Otherwise, sir, like you've mentioned in the book, if you would have been a part of MATE at that time, maybe this industry, the software services industry, may not have come thus far and create a niche of its own. Truly, your vast experiences have taught us the importance of being ethical and collaborative. And I'm glad, sir, that you picked that pillar of the collaboration and compete, right? Because it was something that I had also noted in for myself. Because then, according to him in the book also, then you can resolutely pursue the bigger national goal much beyond self. And selfless service is something sir practices, and it has also been illustrated beautifully in the book. There were several such incidents that he's brought out for us today and also in the book. But believe me, there are many, many such stories of ups and downs, of scams and successes and other things. There are magical successes which are hidden in the pages of the book. There are some stories which many of us would read with amazement and amusement. When I read it, sir, because there were some amusing stories which I couldn't believe it could be true, right? And sir has the courage to write it through. So you must, as you go through the book, you will enjoy it, I'm sure. Of course, I could not put the book down. I've read it twice already. For me, the book talk today is a very special one. Not only that, this is the first book talk session which is happening in person for NMIMS University. So that's a great thing, and because we've had some... Yeah. Yes, and you're a lovely audience, thank you. It is made even more special.
I'll tell you who we are, since you talked about us. Mr. Vittal used to say, who was the DOE secretary at that time, and he started enjoying working with us. He says, NASSCOM, N stands for nuts, A stands for asshole, then S stands for stupid, the next S stands for screwball, O is for oddball, and M is mad. And he said, and I am the leader of this mad group. So that was the branding we enjoyed
Fantastic.
with everybody.
Humility, this is the humility with which you say and what you've achieved. That's great. Sorry. Yes. I'm very thankful to Ms. Natasha Mehta, daughter-in-law of Mr. Mehta, to have helped us shape up these things and making this happen. I must also say this, that Natasha, you brought out some of the nuances which actually we could plug it into our questions, and I hope we have lived up to your expectations of we quizzing sir on your behalf, right? We are very fortunate to have amidst us Srimati Manisha Verma ji, Principal Secretary, Skills, Employment, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Department. Ma'am, thank you so much for gracing this occasion. We are honored. Thank you. We're very blessed with the presence of Shri Nayan Bhai Patel, sir. You are a constant mentor and a source of inspiration. Thank you for being here, and I know that you're a great friend with Mr. Mehta, and he would have probably agreed only because of you. So thank you so much. I would like to thank our Dean, Dr. Mahajan, for being a constant support and guidance for us here. Lastly, no event is what it is without the enthusiasm and the passion of the audience sitting here. My young students, thank you so much. And it was lovely. I'm sure when we talk about information systems and information technology in our classes, across various other subjects as well, when you look at IT, now you will have a perspective where we were and what we are today, and what is it that is in store in future for you. So thank you so much to everyone. Have a nice day from now. Thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah. So we'd like to present you with a memento from all of us here to thank you for gracing us with your presence here and for such an informative session that we had today. I'm sure for us it is very important to know where we've come from, our roots, and then take it ahead. So please accept this from all of us.
There are a number of copies of books outside this registration, outside this hall. There's a registration desk. All of you who are interested in buying that book, please do so. And we will be there with sir in the lounge behind. Those of you who would like to get it autographed, especially by sir, please feel free to do so. It's a golden opportunity. Thank you.